I'm John Wilson. Welcome to Owned and Operated. Twice a week, we talk about home service businesses, and if you're a home service entrepreneur, then this is going to be the show for you. We talk about our own business in residential plumbing, HVAC, and electric, and we also talk about business models that we just find interesting. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to Owned and Operated. We have an exciting podcast today. We have Tyson from Avoca. We've been touching on AI the past few weeks, and we love this product. John's currently using it, and so we're really excited to dig in today. How are you doing, Tyson?
Doing well. Couldn't be more excited to be here.
Awesome. Can you give us a little rundown, a little background about yourself, the product, just kind of a general overview of who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can quickly start by introducing kind of what we do, the platform, and then, give a brief background on myself. So Avoca, we are the AI call center platform for the trades. We specialize in specifically serving folks in HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. We're in over 45 different states now, and have multiple product lines, all surrounding how do you get the most out of your call center, which is oftentimes one of the most neglected but high value things that owners can do. Brief background on myself: I've been in the AI world for over 10 years. Started in the Voice AI lab at MIT. That's actually where I met my co-founder. And then over the years, I've helped instrument early generations of AI chatbots at many Fortune 500 companies, such as the largest banks in the US. And then during my time in consulting, and then I spent over 3 years working on self-driving cars and helping to commercialize that technology at one of the leading self-driving car companies now called Neuro. Really excited to be helping to bring AI into the trades, which I think is one of the most underserved niches, but an area in a space where AI can actually have the most profound and dramatic impact.
Very, very cool. And so how did you end up in the trades? Like you said, banking, self-driving cars, there's so many opportunities. What actually drove you? What was the defining moment that said, AI, trades, call center, let's do this?
Yep. Great question. So one of the factors was that my co-founder, who actually has family in Michigan in the trades. Now they're a bit smaller. They're not, in one of the larger companies. They're a bit more man in the van. But we also, during the early days of the company, we actually looked at a few different industries and where we could apply kind of the research that we've been doing for so long. And we discovered that the trades was actually much better, because when you compare AI in the trades versus, let's say, something like restaurants, when you go to a restaurant, first of all, most of the orders don't come from phone calls. In fact, only less than 15% come from phone calls. And when you miss an order, a call at a restaurant, that may be a $20, $30 ticket item. And so it's really not that impactful. And also, people aren't usually making phone orders late night. And so when you compare that to the trades, it's just a much different ballgame where phone calls matter significantly more. A single missed call can be a $20,000, $30,000 opportunity that was just missed.
Yes.
Over 90% of a home service company's revenue comes from phone calls. So we just discovered, in the startup world, one of the most important things to do is to always be solving a what we call a hair on fire problem. And so we discovered that, in applying AI to the trades, that was what we were solving, whereas it just wasn't that important for some of the other industries.
Okay, so we chatted a little bit about it already, but so Avoca is a AI for the call center. Can you talk a little bit about like what that means, how it's changing the traditional call center, and like what best practices are you kind of seeing out of that? Where's the metrics? What's the numbers that you get to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to share kind of more broadly on what makes a good call center, some best practices. Maybe I'll start briefly, to address the first point of your question around what does Avoca bring to the table from an AI perspective. Really, it's two main things. So one, and I think it's two areas where, especially in the trades, I see so many people can dramatically improve their business by focusing more on the call center. And those two areas is one, after hours overflow calls, where
Hmm.
a lot of times, especially folks just starting off, doing maybe more like 1 to 5 million in revenue, they oftentimes really don't have a good process for handling after hours and overflow. I would say level one is, first of all, you just need someone to answer the phone. When calls go to voicemail, I've talked to so many folks where they're still using voicemail. That call is as good as gone. When it's 2
Yeah.
a.m. and your air conditioning is broken, you're not going to leave a voicemail. You're just going to call the next two, three, four people until you find someone that can fix your air conditioning and get you scheduled. So voicemail, that's kind of the absolute low hanging fruit. If you're using voicemail for after hours, you're just leaving a lot of revenue on the table. So that's kind of the first point. And then the second point is, once you get a little bit more nuanced than that, there's a lot of additional things that you can improve upon. One is abandonment rates. Traditional after hours and overflow call centers, they may have 10-15% abandonment rate, especially in the heat of the summer when everyone's calling, and your traditional call centers are just being completely flooded. Again, no one's going to wait 2 minutes to just talk to someone. So that's the second point. And then finally, I think the other thing that a lot of folks, once you get these kind of basic things done, you're already, at a pretty good state. Then you got to think about overall as a call center operation, how do you put the right people to the right phone calls? And so what I mean by this is, certain campaigns, that the expected value on that lead is going to be higher. So you want to be putting your more experienced CSRs to those leads.
Huh.
That's another thing. And then one final thing I'll mention is around handling every call the right way. And this is really where we saw, John, how big is your call center? I think it's around like 18 people
Yeah,
last I checked.
it's like 18, 19 people.
Yeah, yeah. So when you have that many people, obviously, there's a lot of effort to maintain a high quality and a high bar, and there's usually a disparity, and it's not really anyone's fault that between newer CSRs and top performing CSRs, there's a very large variation. Top performers might be closing rates at around 85, 90%. Newer folks might be booking more at around 50%, right? So there's a huge disparity, and one of the things that separates the best call centers from more mediocre or newer call centers is how do you make sure that everyone is saying the right things, adhering to all the principles on salesmanship, and increasing their booking rates. And so that's the kind of final piece around optimizing your call center in kind of all the different aspects.
Yeah, I mean,
Have you
fair enough.
noticed?
We have go for it, John.
Have you noticed a difference in like incentives for the call takers and performance out of that call center?
Yeah, absolutely. So great question, and I think there's some different there's a few different thoughts I have on this matter. I think generally when you have the first thing to mention is that you're exactly right. The call center itself is oftentimes thought of as just customer success, customer support, but in reality, it's actually sales. A customer oftentimes when they're calling a trades company, they have at least 5 or 6 different options they can go for. And so really in order to book the lead properly, you need to convey your brand. And because of that, it is actually very important to treat your CSRs like your sales folks and provide the right incentives. So I totally see companies that instrument incentive programs, kind of commission based booking, are actually the ones that are doing a lot better.
Do you have an example of a commission-based program you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think we see actually a few examples. So we're working. I think there's two ways to do it. One is just on how well that you've followed the procedures. We have a company that is using us for coaching their CSRs, and at the end of every week, the CSR that has the highest kind of rubric score gets a $50 gift card. So that's actually worked really well, and they've seen their booking rates shoot up across the board. And then, yeah, more traditional one may just be offering a spiff per booked call. Yeah, I've seen anywhere from $10 to $20. But yeah, those have also been effective.
Interesting. So when we talk about call center a lot, you're focusing a lot on the CSR as a specific position. When you're inside like John's business, it's not just a CSR in the call center. It's a CSR, dispatcher, ISRs, outbounders. There's a lot of different positions. Is that the typical model that you see in the call centers you're working with, or is there any kind of specific model that you can talk about today that kind of threw you off or surprised you?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the stage of the company. All right, we work with some companies that they are just starting to get their first CSR, and so the level of sophistication is obviously very different. And a lot of our companies have anywhere from 5 to 10 CSR. That's another tier. And so I'd say once you get past the 10 CSR, that's where you really start the specialization. Some people are really great at outbounding. Some people are doing more inside sales. So yeah, there's definitely some of that kind of stratification. I will say though that one thing that I think is really important, especially once the CSR group gets larger, is being able to maintain that high quality bar. Because we see this a lot, and when you go over 10 CSRs, that's really when you see a pretty sharp drop off between the ones that are experienced and the ones that are a bit newer. And there's also there ends up being a lot more. There's a lot more room for folks to not really know the full kind of range of scripting, and so that's where you end up in trouble.
And curious, so we're talking about bandwidth and CSRs being good or bad. So what do you see in field as kind of the optimal number of calls a CSR should be receiving per day, receiving outbound? How many can they handle?
Yeah, so I would describe it less as number of calls, because sometimes call duration is typically can change. I would describe it more as like what percentage of the time are they on calls, because frankly, if
Very good point.
if they're over if they're over 50% of their time is on calls, they're just not going to be playing their A game. They're just gonna be too tired. Kind of their voices might be worn out. They're just not going to have the same level of compassion and empathy you want. I say the sweet spot for the amount of time that your CSR should be on the phone versus doing other tasks to be around 35 to 40%. And yeah, I think, and that's talk time, obviously.
Yeah, John, is that currently a metric that you measure? We don't measure time on call. I mean, we measure like the length of the call, but not specifically the percentage per day that they're talking.
Yeah, we measure minutes a day on phone.
Interesting. Is that in Service Titan?
We pull it off of AirCall, and we started doing it because we found some people were on the phone for like 45 minutes a day, and they were sliding under the radar, just like underperforming. So then we started tracking it, and I think right now we're at like 180 to 200 minutes a day on average.
So that's like 3 hours out of 8. So about 40%, right? That's pretty spot on.
We were aiming for much higher.
What's that?
So this is kind of interesting that that people do well at our current level.
Yeah, I would say definitely don't go above 50%. That's a level where it's usually not sustainable. You get more burnout. So yeah, you guys are at 37.5. I could say you guys could ratchet it up to as high as low 40s. There's a bit of room to optimize a bit, but you guys are at a good level.
Interesting. Well, and so we were talking offline a little bit about, I believe the term is man in the middle. Is that what you were using?
Yeah, well, human in the loop.
Human in the
It's
loop. Thank you. Human in the loop. Can you explain to us and the viewers what I'm changing bases a little bit, but what human in the loop is and how you're using that in this call center context?
Yeah, absolutely. So human in the loop is a concept. I mean, it's been around for a while, and it's been around, in other industries where AI has really taken over. But the basic premise is that the AI, even let's say even for like self-driving in the self-driving space, AI is not going to be perfect, right? You're not going to, and you can see behind me, I have the a little neuro bot from my my time in neuro. But there's always these instances in self-driving where the vehicle it may be at a specific point in time where it encounters a situation that it's never encountered before. And
Mm-hmm.
so in that time, the AI is actually not going to know what to do. And so you need a human operator to actually come in and essentially save the day a bit and take over. And so it's the same idea in AI. And so I see this all the time. And there's a lot of folks that are trying to do what we do now, which is have these essentially AI receptionists. And I think the thing that people forget is that at the end of the day, AI is a great tool, but it is just a tool, and you want at the end of the day more than anything to have the highest performance. And what does that mean? It means that you want to represent your brand the right way. You need to treat your customers the right way, and you need to ensure high booking rates. And so we see this a lot where, especially for certain demographics, when they hear an AI, even the best sounding AIs, they still know it's an AI. And so they may not be happy and they may just drop off. So the point of human in the loop is AI can do a lot of things really well, but there's still things that a human is just fundamentally better at. For example, it's 4 a.m. and your AC just broke. You want to hear that you're talking to another human. And so we've developed this system at Avoca where we actually are essentially able to have AI working with humans, highly trained humans in the U.S. In synchrony, and that degree at which you're able to kind of intertwine the two, uh, transfer the call at the right time, provide the right context to the human when they come in. That whole kind of system is human in the loop.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we joke about sometimes. There have been a few companies that we've tested their 100% AI phone systems, and you give them some wonky questions like, "A rat has eaten through my air conditioner. What should I do?" And they just go off the wall. And so that was one of our big moments where we said, it's not there yet, because of course with all this AI, we're or this big push for AI, we are always testing and figuring out, hey, is it the time? Is it the time? And we found it to be a fairly comical conversations. But I could definitely see a situation where AI is coaching, like you mentioned before, and AI is also like setting them up, taking a few questions, and then giving it to a
And
human to
then
really knock
priming
out
it's
the park.
human, and it's all about setting that human. So then, really, what it comes down to now is that instead of completely replacing the humans, you can have one human do the job of five humans. You're essentially giving more leverage for each of your individual CSRs. So think about it this way: during the course of a day, many people don't realize this, but a lot of the calls are just not important, and we can call them non-revenue
I
sensitive.
have noticed that.
On average, it varies quite a bit regionally, but on average, 60% of calls you get are actually non-revenue sensitive. These calls can actually be handled very well by AI because it's usually just, someone looking for a job, where you just want to collect their information, their background. AI can do all of that really well. There's vendors are trying to call, spam calls,
Yeah,
someone's leaving a message for the office. 60% of jobs AI can handle really well. And then that means that you can stop having this 60% of the job being handled by your great CSRs. Let
that's a
AI
good
take
point.
care of that. And then for the actual revenue sensitive jobs, when someone actually needs service or something else, then you can have transfer that to a highly trained CSR. And then even within that 40% of revenue sensitive jobs, some of them may just be things like scheduling routine maintenance. That's something that's simple enough that AI can handle quite well.
Hmm.
And so, the nice part is that for us, we allow each customer to basically configure that. But yeah, in general, I think it is critical to have this human in the loop component and have the system that is able to transfer the knowledge of what's already happened well enough so that the human can come in and take over the call in the best way possible.
I love that so much. So you talked a little about like setting the human up for success, uh, not including all of these kind of points that we just touched on in terms of like, is this a revenue generation call? But for purely revenue generation calls, what are questions that should be asked prior to talking with a human, or even as just in generalistic terms, your CSR should be asking the customer? What do you see are some of the most valuable questions that you see put into the software to make sure that they're asking prior?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I'll start by saying that the first thing you want to do is express empathy for the customer situation, and so you have to understand their issue, their whatever issue they're dealing with, and then express empathy. That's always the best way to start out every call. And there's specific wording that you also want to use. After that, there's a few things that are important. It really depends on what the
So
kind of problem
real
they're facing.
quick, so you're saying when someone calls in and says, "I have a 10-year-old unit, it's broken, HVAC," you don't answer hell yeah. You don't say yes. I mean, sorry. Good to. I mean, nice to meet you. Yeah, yeah, we'll get out there.
Yeah, no, no, exactly. Exactly. We definitely don't want to say that. And in
Well,
fact,
so
quite the
John
opposite.
uses right. John uses how can we make you smile? I wouldn't say that's an empathy term, right? I mean, it's a how can we serve you term.
I would say, so just to clarify, this is the after. So you start with the first line, which is a nice,
Yeah,
great
brand
greeting,
play.
upbeat. How may I make you smile? How may I serve you? There's a variety of folks that folks like to use. Afterwards, then they'll usually say their issue, like, "Oh man, I came home and my air conditioning, my air conditioning was blowing out hot air, or it's
Hmm.
making a rattling noise." After they say that, then you need to hit them with the empathy statement, and then that after all of that, you've established the empathy. Then you want to go into the information gathering. So there's a few ways to do this, but one thing is, especially for AI systems, is you want to try to collect the information, like their contact information, relatively quickly, so that if the call for whatever reason drops, you still have that as a lead. And then afterwards, you want to identify kind of some information that'll help you understand the size of this opportunity. And that is obviously different based on what they said their issue was. If
Yeah.
if the issue was regarding their air conditioning or heating unit, you obviously want to ask age of equipment. For other things, you might want to ask about the age of the home, whether they're a member, and then it kind of gets a little bit more custom. But yeah, those are just some general principles around starting the call.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting as you were describing that problem and solution, I thought it would be interesting if so many of our phone calls, it's like hundreds a day, are
Yep,
non-revenue. It's like it doesn't matter.
exactly.
And it would be and everyone's trying to solve for that. They put in like a maze or whatever, the menu at the beginning, but then your abandon rate just jumps when you do that. So it'd
And then your
be
your Google ratings also drop because they look at
yeah,
how If you're using an automated system, there are humans collecting it. Yep.
Yeah. So we haven't done that because we don't want to mess with that. But what would be sweet is if like the first answer was always AI and then like handed over to a human. Maybe not always AI, but like
Yeah.
if a lot of the sort of unnecessary stuff got handed over,
Exactly.
or even maybe by channel, because like our legacy, like our 60-year-old phone number, that probably gets way more spam than
Exactly.
that would be like vendors or something. So we could probably set that one number up to
Yep.
be fully AI and then hand it
Exactly.
over. Okay.
No, that's you're spot on. I think the way to do it is to do it by some type of smart segmentation, where certain numbers you use in your marketing campaigns, you may be paying $500 per that lead, and you know that's going to be a hot lead, and they're probably shopping around, and you may just want to bypass the AI. The AI is getting better every month, but for now, you want to probably during the daytime route that directly to your best CSR with the highest closing rates. And then for the other numbers, the main numbers where, we have to look at the statistics, but if you have one number that is like 60, 70% non-revenue sensitive, you can have that handled by the AI. Then another step that you can do afterwards, which is you already have an understanding of all of your customers' numbers in Service Titan or whatever CRM you're using. And so you can even do something smart there where, if you recognize the number, you can just directly, and if you see that they have a job today, then you can probably determine that they're most likely calling to about the job or rescheduling it. And so that operation is something that AI can handle real well. So you can route it based on that information as well.
Yeah.
Good.
So how would that happen? Would they get like like a different phone number if it's an in progress job, or how would you even make that part happen?
Yeah, so that part would just be handled by basically by in your case by us. We would be able to handle that routing based on looking at the caller ID and then routing it in the right direction. So in terms of the setup from your telephony system, you would just pass that number on directly to us, and then you would let us handle the rest of the kind of complex routing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I don't think I've ever actually thought about like right CSR, right call. Like we
Mhm.
think about right tech, right job all the time. I
Oh
don't think
yeah,
I've I don't think I've ever
common
thought
concept.
about right CSR, right call.
Well, that's because it's so hard to measure, right? You'd have to
Well, even
grade.
route, like how do you manage?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
that's the problem is how do you get um yeah, I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole now. This is interesting.
It's not that hard, right? Because first of all, you have statistics. I mean, our platform provides statistics on CSR performance, so you can easily just see who the best CSRs are. And then, for a lot of these telephony systems, for example, Dialpad, each CSR has their own number. So then you can just route, specific calls to those numbers and create, a group in Dialpad, which is your highest performers. And so then those guys always get first priority at, let's say, the 500 lead, $500 per lead calls that come in through your marketing campaigns.
Shit. Yeah, this makes sense.
That's super interesting. Real quick, side before we get back to that, do you have a preference of call software? I mean, you mentioned Dialpad before. We use Grasshopper. We're not overly thrilled with it. Is there anybody that sticks out as they do it really well?
I'd say Dialpad is pretty good. A lot of our customers use it and seem to like it. I think that there are also a few other ones that are at a similar level, like Ring Central, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think you really can't go wrong with the main ones. Grasshopper, I think, is a bit lighter weight, and so probably
Exactly.
yes. So I think for the slightly smaller companies that could also work. But yeah, I think the two big ones are Dialpad and Ring Central, and I don't think you can really go wrong with either.
That's great because like we get a lot of questions surrounding that just as small companies who have any of these smaller less hefty kind of VoIP switch from like what we're doing, a small one like Grasshopper, and then move to one that's going to be able to sustain us with our growth. We're trying to find it. So we'll keep that in mind. Ring Central and Dialpad.
Yep.
I appreciate it. Sorry for derailing conversation. I know we get that one probably once a month. So
yeah, one other thing I would mention a lot is we're talking about the topic of just general best practices and how do you improve your general performance. And again, like given that in this industry 90% of your revenue is coming from call center, you have to keep in mind that any percentage improvements that you make with your call center, that's just going to cascade basically to top line revenue. So anyhow, one thing I did want to mention is regarding calls that aren't booked, and especially in the summertime when people are overloaded with calls. I've actually been seeing this happen quite often, where folks are missing a lot of calls, but B, they're not closing the call and they're not booking a job. And so how do you deal with this? And the best companies actually have very specific processes they use to ensure that if the job comes in, and if the job they deem to be a high ticket value job, like an install or an older 10+ year system, they will have mechanisms in place to instantly text and call that customer back. And so one thing that Coach has actually a new functionality we just launched a few weeks ago. And John, I think we still need to get you guys on this one. But what it does is when it detects a job is bookable, like there's an intent to book, and we detect that it's not booked, we actually will send an automatic alert, whether it be email, Slack, text, to the call center manager and to the dispatcher to let them know of this opportunity that was just missed. We'll let them know why it was missed. So the reason that the customer didn't book, may it be you weren't able to come out fast enough, the dispatch fee was too high, or something else. And so that way you have probably a 5-10 minute window before they call someone else, that you can call them back and say, hey, for you, I'm going to make an exception and waive that dispatch fee so that you can essentially recover these lost jobs.
That is something that keeps me up at night. So that's absolutely incredible. As you go back, I mean, like I said, we're a $3 to $5 million company. So we don't have the same kind of capabilities to listen to every single call. And there'll be once in every blue moon where we go and listen and go, why didn't we just waive the dispatch fee here? Come on. It was an 8-year-old system with a blown compressor. Like either way, it was a win.
Yes.
That's absolutely an incredible function and feature.
Exactly.
Well, that was the benefit, because we did have like a call listening team, but we've been using Avoca, the coach side of the program, for like, I think we're 2 months in now, or 6 weeks.
Yep.
And yeah, we literally, our old call listening program was like 3 or 4 people, and they could only get to like a third of the phone calls, maybe less. So, but now we can listen to 100%. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, they're probably doing it like maybe once a week or so, and then
they were full time on it. They were like people in the Philippines, but it's like 1,000 phone calls a day in and out if you include all the outbounds and everything. So it was just a lot to keep up with.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, this is we see this all the time. Folks are just listening to calls themselves.
Yeah.
Spending a lot of time. You're not even getting to all the calls, and then obviously that just some of these other things like being able to classify jobs correctly, which is something that a lot of folks struggle with. If I were to ask you guys, like, for example, Jack, do you have an accurate idea of what your true booking percentage is across
Absolutely your not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we try to get as close, but we're still in the phase where we just implemented Service Titan this year, and so we're taking down all of the kind of big, the big wins one by one, and that's coming up to try and figure out, hey, are our metrics on call center correct?
Well, it's challenging because a lot of it's self-reported. So like I could
Exactly.
tell you
Yeah.
what ours is self-reported, but I believe that it's wildly off.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we find when we do in-depth analysis, it's usually at least 30% off,
Yeah.
because a
Yeah.
lot of times uh, it's a lot higher because CSRs, by default, they have a bias of, hey, if I didn't book it, then it wasn't a lead, and
Yep.
so yeah, I mean the thing I always tell folks is how can you really improve something when you can't even measure it accurately?
Yeah. Hard agree.
Yeah. And then warranty, out figuring out like what's a warranty, what's an actual
Yeah.
callback
Yeah.
versus what's not, because then that's the one we're dealing with right now. Because realistically, right, we are performance pay, so not hitting certain performance metrics for the techs because something was booked incorrectly, absolutely kills them. So like this is a big rock for us.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, you brought up a good point. It's actually not, part of it is booking the job. Obviously, we want that, but beyond that is also presenting the brand in the right way, and then setting your techs up for success once they get into the house. And there's ways in which you want to speak and convey and kind of guide the call that it's very difficult for kind of the average CSR to do well, and so yeah, I think there's many levels to it.
This is another interesting one, just a curiosity. Do you have metrics on, like, say if you were to not insert that initial empathy statement, what does the call booking rate look like? Does it physically drop? Are you guys able to measure that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We are able to be honest, we haven't run that analysis yet.
That'd be super cool to see.
That would be a good one though, because yeah, what we do anecdotally see is that if you don't have the empathy statement, the tone of the call is usually quite different, and yeah, I think when folks feel that they're just being kind of guided through a mechanical process, you're just not really building the connection, and there is a chance that even if you book them, they may just end up choosing someone else.
Yeah,
But
it
yeah,
feels more transactional is the word I like to use.
exactly.
So that's super interesting. I'd love to see the data on all those kind of things, because I think we play this game a lot where we believe the psychology of the customer is going to work in X, Y, or Z way, but the reality of it is it just doesn't at all. So I think a big one is wrapped trucks versus unwrapped trucks and how that affects closing rate and average tickets. And like, do you see that? And I mean, John can speak to this one. It affects it, I'm sure, but not to the extent that I think a lot of people believe it would. So oh, John's talking to someone else. Thought he was muted. So I'd love to see the data when that does come out, because that would be incredible to see, like, what are actually the points in which the conversation happens that truly make a statistical difference to booking rate and eventually down the road and like average order value and total revenue.
Yeah, I have a few of those data points. I don't have that empathy statement one in particular, but we actually do have metrics on a few other things. One of them being the what we call the longest dead time, and what we actually see is that anytime there is a dead time of 10 seconds or more, there is a 15% chance that the caller just drops. And so, by just removing instances of that occurrence, you can instantly improve your booking rates by virtue of having less people drop. There's other things like being able to when you're on a call, and I was just talking to Doug Wyatt actually. He's a industry leader in how to coach folks how to say the right things. He's very opinionated, and an expert on how to say things the right way. But he was telling me an interesting point around, one of the things he always coaches his CSRs is when you're talking to a woman on the phone, you don't want to ever mention the word issue, because that is something that he just has found through his research is not well received, and so that's just one kind of one you can incorporate. And similarly, you don't want to use the word problem when you're talking to men. That statistically, that if you don't use the word problem when you're talking to men on the phone, that can also increase your booking rates.
I think the coolest thing is that we're going to actually be able to track this in the near future. Like, I know that this gentleman is saying that, and he's probably an expert in his field and, everything like that. But at the end of the day, right, we're going to be able to listen to every call across, well, you guys are, every call across, hundreds and hundreds of companies, hopefully, for your business. And, you get these giant data points where, I can't imagine how you would do that with a smaller study. I mean, I'm sure you could, but like in this way, in shape and form, you guys are going to be able to test these subconscious word cues and then put all that in action. So that's going to be super fun. I mean, at least it would be fun to me, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I've always been a data nerd myself, and so I love this stuff. And yeah, the good news is actually in the platform, it's so configurable. I mean, John, you guys, you obviously know this more than anything, but you can set up the rubric. You can have the AI listen to exactly what you want it to listen to, and so even things like, hey, rubric item, do not say the word issue when talking to a woman on the phone, is something that you can just build in, and the Avoca AI evaluator can help you track that, and then you can and then obviously you can coach based off of that. Something else that is super helpful. Do you guys have membership programs?
Yep.
Yeah, so memberships is key. It results in a significantly higher lifetime value than non-members. And so one of the things that we've been helping a ton of especially larger companies with is making sure that their CSRs are mentioning that on virtually all their calls. And so before, there was really no good way to measure that. A lot of companies we worked with, they've continued to emphasize this. They would continue to kind of mention this at every weekly meeting, but still we saw through the data less than 10% of CSRs were actually mentioning the membership option in their calls. And then after using the coach platform and after actually tracking that number moved from 10% to over 50%. And that actually resulted in a significant increase in the number of memberships sold across a number of our customers.
Yeah, I could definitely imagine that to be true. And the utilization of that kind of feature is really interesting because I know John and I both have used a strategy when opening up secondary verticals of just offering, secondary verticals of at least offering that. And I know that like, hey, we're offering plumbing now, or hey, we're offering electrical, just giving you a heads up. If you wanted to book, we have that opportunity. And I know that it was a struggle on our end getting our 3 CSRs to all do it every single time. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I was busy. But we didn't have percentages to be able to coach them and follow up with them on. So that's an awesome feature. I mean, all of this sounds like an awesome feature. I think if anything today, you at least have one new customer. So
nice. All right. Well, we'll get you guys rolling.
Get you set up.
Yeah, this was great, man. I appreciate the dive into call center. There's a couple episodes that I like re-listen to later. And this is definitely gonna be one of them. Because it stretched the brain a little bit, and I've been working with you for a few months now, but like this was good.
This will also be a fun one to listen to like a year from now and see just like based on the speed of like the J curve of how AI is going, see where Avoca is in a year and like what you guys are all doing then.
Yeah. I mean, I think, even Avoca aside, there's just a lot of opportunity, especially in this industry. In a lot of other industries, they've had sophisticated analytics and really emphasis on call center performance. But it's one of those things, it's just really not top of mind for especially a lot of the earlier kind of companies that may not be doing over 30, 40 million, or maybe just kind of starting out more in the 1 to 5, 1 to 10 million range. There's so many things to obviously focus on that they end up really not thinking at all about the call center. And so if anything, even beyond just all the AI innovation that's happening in this space, just to actually track and have processes set up to do some of these different things, I think can make a world of difference and really accelerate the growth for owners.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And I know that we've seen, I think we're still in the learning phase. We're still like trying to understand how to best use it, but it's showing up more in our trainings. And yeah, I think it's going to compound pretty fast, like a accumulated advantage.
Yes, absolutely.
This was sick, man.
Yeah, the book. Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, and I really enjoyed this. It was great to meet you, Jack. I've heard so many episodes, but it was great to finally to meet you.
So, Ron or Tyson, where can people learn more about Avoca, learn more about you? Is there a place for each? Where can people hear more?
Yeah, so there's there's a variety of things. I mean, if you're interested in the platform, more than happy to give you guys a demo with one of the members of our team. So you can just go to our website and press book a demo, and then for the promo code, make sure to put in the promo code owned to get a special discount.
So that answers that question. No, I'm kidding. And then are you on, I know, we kind of had a startup on Twitter. We met a lot of people. Are you on Twitter, or is there anywhere that people can connect with you directly if you want that whatsoever?
Yeah. I'm actually not too active on Twitter, but you can connect with me. If you're interested in anything, feel free to email me. My email is just tyson@avoca.ai. Otherwise, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so that's an avenue. But yeah, guys, really enjoyed this.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. If you liked this episode, go ahead and give us 5 stars so that our moms know that we're actually doing something with our lives. And go head over to the website, ownedandoperated.com, and catch us on Twitter.
Thanks for tuning in to Owned and Operated, the podcast for home service entrepreneurs. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the like button and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out. You can find me on Twitter at @WilsonCompanies. I'll see you next time.